Hey guys, and welcome back to Monka, where stuff of unknown nature ensues, but today I beat a video game, or I should say yesterday I beat a video game. I kind of want to talk about it because honestly my opinions on it have kind of been lingering on my mind. I just kind of want to get it out there. But what game did I beat? Well, yesterday night I beat Live A Live, specifically the Nintendo Switch version that was released in July of 2022. I bought it when it came out in July. Had a couple games at the time that were still playing through, so it sat on the back burner for a bit. I picked it up about late October, beat it in November of this year, or depending of, I guess, last year, depending on when this comes out. But Live A Live originally came out in 1994 for the Super Famicom, was published and developed by Square Enix, never left Japan at the time, so this game actually never came over into the West until 2022, specifically, like I said, July 2022, when it was released on the Nintendo Switch, still published and developed by Square Enix. Currently at this moment, it still is a Nintendo Switch exclusive. Probably by, I guess, July 2022, I imagine it'll eventually leave the Switch and come to other platforms, but as of right now, it is just a Switch exclusive. But the long and the short of my opinion on this game is I have a very apparently different opinion than everyone else does, because I've read online people's opinions talking about this game, and everyone's like, oh, this game's amazing, it's great. Some people even put it like as their game of the year, and really I don't see this game like that. Live Alive is a game that honestly I have very mixed opinions about. I love some things about this game, but some things I really just don't like about this game. It's, in my opinion, a very mixed game, okay game, but it's not amazing, and I definitely don't think this is contending for game of the year, at least game of the year for what I've played so far this year. But anyways, let's get into why my opinions are so mixed. But first we're going to start with the graphics. Now, I usually don't comment on graphics. I usually say it's whatever, I don't give a shit, because really that's how I am. I just don't give a shit about the graphics. But honestly, Live Alive has some really good graphics that just are stand out. Like for a remaster, they do really interesting graphics. Really, I think Square Enix has been dubbing the graphics as like HD 2D graphics, kind of what they did in Octopath Traveler and Triangle Strategy, and honestly they are just beautiful graphics for a remaster. Using 3D graphic environments with pixel sprites is just something else, and it's beautiful, and the sprites are beautiful too, and even like shadows and everything interact with the sprites. It's a really beautiful art style, and it's really unique, and I hope Square Enix does it more, because honestly this art style is like bar none, like absolutely beautiful, and I love it. So in terms of graphics, this game is awesome. I haven't played Octopath Traveler or Triangle Strategy, but I know when I do that I'll love the graphics, because this game's graphics are awesome and they have the same graphics. Definitely worth at least looking at videos to see the graphics, because these graphics are freaking awesome. But in terms of the music of the game, honestly music is kind of in that mixed category for me, really. There's some songs which I felt were pretty great. Some of the battle themes, specifically I think Prehistory battle theme, and then a couple others. I think the Middle Ages battle theme was pretty great. Otherwise, some of the songs in here are just kind of, they complement the mood, but they're nothing amazing. There's a couple of standouts, but really the whole soundtrack isn't a banger, unfortunately. Like I said, the ones that really stick out in my mind are like the battle theme for the Prehistory, and then the battle theme for the Middle Ages, which is also the opener. Those two songs in my mind stand out a whole bunch, and I really like them. Otherwise, the soundtrack is alright. There's probably a couple more that I really liked, but I just can't remember them at the moment. But it's an alright soundtrack. It does have a couple bangers, but unfortunately the whole soundtrack isn't like that. Now, gameplay is a kind of a point of contention, because it kind of leads and bleeds into the story as well. The gameplay, I really like the combat in this game. I would go as far as say actually not even really liked. I loved it, the combat. The combat in this game is something else for turn-based, and it's really unique, and it's just a fresh take on turn-based RPG combat. I may have not enjoyed some elements of this game, but the gameplay, at least in the turn-based combat, was so much fun that I was able to play through the entire game and kind of ignore things. The combat is kind of a turn-based, I guess, tactical RPG almost. It's not a strategy RPG, but it's still kind of a turn-based, based on a grid. It has an action meter, kind of like you'd know in some other games that are turn-based. Maybe Final Fantasy VII is kind of what I'm thinking. Pretty much you move around a grid, and your attacks are grid-based. When you move, it also amps the action meter of your allies as well as your enemies, and pretty much when your action meter is full, you can attack. It's just really unique how it's executed, and really just the grid-based combat also lends itself to some area of effect things, like where you can turn tiles into poison damage or like fire damage. It's really unique and really cool. I love the combat in this game. Honestly, I wish Square Square Enix would do more with that combat, because it's a lot of fun, and really one of the big reasons why I could carry through this game as long as I did. Now, in terms of the gameplay, I feel kind of mixed on. The roaming parts are pretty decent, but at the same time, it varies from chapter to chapter. There's some chapters where I like the roaming around the map gameplay more than I do in other chapters. It's really chapter to chapter very based, and I'm going to discuss that more when I get to the story, which is where I can kind of get into the chapters. But the combat is really good, but unfortunately, when you're kind of roaming, the roaming segments really depend chapter to chapter. Like, if I look at the list, honestly, I liked prehistories, I really like Japan's, I like the distant future, near future, Middle Ages, but present day, Wild West, Imperial China, all of those are not really good wandering segments. Some of them don't even let you wander. In terms of length of chapters is also something I have a problem with, because there's 9 total chapters, but the game runtime is about 25 hours. So the game for a JRPG is relatively short, but it has a lot of chapters. Like I said, 9. You have 7 unlocked up front, and then you unlock the 8th one after you beat the first 7, and the 9th and final chapter unlocks after you beat the 8th chapter. The chapters vary in quality, and that also goes along with the story. They vary in quality dependent on which chapter you play. I can say, looking at the list, prehistory I really liked for gameplay. Imperial China I didn't like. I don't know why some of the chapters they decide to level lock you where you can't level up, but Imperial China was one of them. I did not like it. Edo Japan kind of felt like Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes with the openness, but kind of the closed world linearity. It actually was pretty good. Wild West I didn't enjoy because it was way too linear. Present Day I didn't enjoy at all because it was way too linear. Some of these chapters in terms of time can vary from lengths of 1 hour to 3 hours, with the longest being the final chapter, which can last up to 5 to 7 hours. Present Day's chapter was an hour long, and there was absolutely no roaming, and it was kind of jarring. Near Future's chapter I liked. The Distant Future I liked. It actually was pretty unique, the Distant Future. That was one that level locked you. Present Day I should say level locked you as well, but the Distant Future was more like a horror game than it was a JRPG. It was an interesting execution to it, honestly, and it was why I was fine with the Distant Future, was because it was kind of like a horror game. More or less, you were like running around, running away from an enemy, and there was only one battle throughout the entire 3-hour chapter. The Distant Future was pretty unique. The Middle Ages, which is the 8th unlockable chapter, is good, and the final chapter is good as well. Final chapter is pretty much where they try to connect all of the stories together, and they try to have a conclusion. Pretty much the 9th chapter and the final chapter is the one you spend leveling up and then facing the final boss. Pretty unique. I actually like this part of the game the most out of all of them. I wish the entire game was like that, because really what you're doing is you're roaming a semi-closed map that is still pretty open though, crawling dungeons, leveling up, and preparing for the final battle. I enjoyed that chapter. The problem with it is that you have 9 chapters in a 25-hour game, and that's kind of jarring, because really all these chapters kind of feel like demos to a bigger game, except for the final chapter, which attempts to connect all of the chapters together. All 8 of the at least main chapters just feel like they're kind of slices out of a bigger game, and they all just feel like demos, which really makes the whole entire experience, I guess, of playing through the game kind of jarring, because you'll play this little 3-hour sliver, and then you'll play this little 1-hour sliver, and then you'll play this other 3-hour sliver that's completely different from the rest, but it has the same gameplay mechanics. It's kind of strange, and I really did not like that gameplay structure at all. Honestly, I just kind of wish everything congealed a bit better. It kind of just feels like a bunch of disjointed stories just slammed into one game, and it just feels all really disconnected and kind of jarring. That leads to one of the big reasons why I feel so mixed about this game, is the structure just feels really weird, and maybe it's just personal preference. I don't know. Maybe you can tell me if you like this kind of storytelling, like this gameplay structure, but I really did not like it, suggesting that I probably won't really like Octopath Traveler, but it's just all these disconnected stories really didn't do it for me. Now when they bring them together in the final chapter, I like it, and really the final chapter is probably the strongest part of this game, just because they bring everything together, and it has some decent length to it. It's about 5 to 7 hours, but really that disjointedness is really the reason why I don't exactly like Live Alive. I couldn't really recommend it for a full price. In terms of the gameplay though, I really like the combat, but I really do not like the disjointed story, and the roaming parts really vary from chapter to chapter. I had a different opinion on each chapter's gameplay, which was kind of why I feel so mixed about this game, and really just that structure of playing the gameplay and having 9 chapters is something I really did not like. Now in terms of the story and characters, this is where it gets weird here as well, and it just comes into more of the opinion of having so many different stories blended into one. I would say, looking at the list again of the 9 chapters, really none of the stories stand out to me, and really all of them feel like kind of cliches to movies or otherwise other types of media. Like Imperial China's chapter is kind of like a story of like a kung fu master teaching his disciples kung fu. Edo Japan is like a samurai movie. The Wild West is like a Wild West movie. Present day kind of takes the structure of Street Fighter, with the gameplay at least, but tells kind of like almost a Rocky story to it. The near future kind of is trying to be a mech anime kind of story. Distant future feels like a rip of Aliens, and the Middle Ages and final chapter really feel like their own unique thing. But each one of these chapters kind of feels like it's ripping off a movie or other form of media, and to be honest, they are all really shallow with the story. Even the final chapter, which ties all of the stories together, still feels relatively shallow in its execution. That shallow story lends to as well the shallow characters. None of the characters really feel like they have any depth, to be honest. And when it comes to the final chapter, they don't really interact at all. Even though you bring all the characters together in the final chapter and they defeat a boss, they don't really interact, and their personalities, which aren't even there, just don't even come together. So I feel like the story and the characters are really lacking. I don't think it's really any fault of the structure of the chapters. I just feel like they made really shallow characters and story due to the fact that they have 9 chapters. None of these stories or characters really feel strong. The characters just kind of feel one-dimensional. They don't really have a lot of depth to their personality, and really it just kind of comes over into the overall problem with the game. With like 9 chapters, it feels like in those 3 hours, or sometimes even an hour, like I said with the present day, they don't have enough time to really develop characters, and so you end up with a bunch of shallow stories and shallow characters. So in terms of the story and characters, didn't really like them because there just wasn't a lot of depth there to be had. But overall, my opinions on Live Alive is that it's a game that I played, and it's a game that at points I enjoyed, but I do have my criticisms about it, and like I said, I feel very mixed about this game. I feel like this game has high points, and I feel like this game has low points, and I feel like the game is just a whole big mixed bag due to the fact that there's so many different varying chapters that just all feel very different, and honestly you feel like you don't get a lot of time with the characters for them to develop. I feel like some of the chapters level locking you is kind of lame. I feel like a lot of things, and I've described all my opinions about this game. I feel mixed. I don't like the story structure of having 9 different chapters with 9 different stories that have varying qualities of gameplay. Honestly, it just feels like a mixed bag. It feels like they took a bunch of gameplay demos and just put them into one game, and then had a final chapter that ties all these gameplay demos together. It kind of feels like a demo disc for 8 different RPGs, to be honest. And while some people might like that, I just did not like this structure. It just doesn't do it for me. I would say if you were thinking about picking it up, I would say it sells for $50, not on sale. I would say $30 is a fair price for this game. Yeah, I have very mixed opinions about this game. I very much vary from the overall norm opinion. The norm opinion is that this game is great. Some people say this game is fantastic. Some people say this is the runner for the game of the year. None of those opinions are mine. This is an okay game in my opinion. Some people will enjoy it more than I do. I know that much, but I'm not trying to rag on it because I mean it's a very high quality game. The gameplay, at least for the turn-based RPG moments, is very much fun. The graphics are very good. It's just the quality of gameplay varies from chapter to chapter, and there really is no strong story. And really the best part is the 9th chapter when the game is ending, because it actually feels like you're getting some gameplay out of it. But overall, Live Alive is going to be a game people are going to either love or hate. I feel like I'm going to be in the minority of people who are mixed about it. Somehow a lot of people seem to love this game, and I guess I'm just in the minority of people who feel mixed about it. But thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'll see you. Stay chill.